The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger. Chapter 5, Part 3. Again, a deep silence falls upon ship and crew, broken only by a strange sound of rushing waters, bursting out and dying away as regularly as the swing of a pendulum. 'Tis Thor's hammer, beating the frightened waters into foam as it sways from side to side. In spite of my effort to appear calm, I can feel my heart beat faster. A cold chill benumbs my hands. A glance ahead startles me like a blow from an unseen hand. There, with the morning sun resting on its hammer-shaped crest, swings that dreaded shaft of flinty rock, threatening instant destruction to any ship bold enough to attempt to pass it. In accordance with my orders, every sail on the coaster has been set and her helm lashed so as to pass to the right of Thor's hammer. "Courage, men!" I cried. "Stand by all! Cut away the lashings! Cast off the tender!" Then, waving my hand to the skipper, our mainsail came down with a run. Everything worked like a charm. Our ship slowed up while the coaster shot ahead to her destruction. See how gallantly the doomed craft speeds on her way, for the breeze had freshened, and several gay streamers and flags, which my men had run up to the top mast, fluttered in the crisp morning air. There! Did you hear that crash? Thor's hammer had struck her. Blow follows blow. Crash, crash, crash. Now it's our time, or never. I was not caught napping. The moment we were clear of the coaster, I had ordered sails enough to be set to hold our ship steady on her course. Already we drew near to Thor's hammer, which is fast battering the coaster to a shapeless mass. The sea is filled with bits of plank and broken timber. Thor's hammer bends to its dread work of destruction, unmindful of our presence. What could withstand its fury? Those sturdy timbers yield like twigs. Another minute, and we have the monster and its victim in our wake. And now we're passing him. Our sails tremble from the very force of his breath. Our deck is strewn with splinters. The roar and crash are deafening. Thor's hammer bends for one last blow at the ribs and keel of its broken and disjointed victim. Hurrah, hurrah! Our good ship dips to the deep roll of the ocean's breast. We are on the open sea. Port No Man's Port, farewell. As my men look back at the rocky gateway and the grim sentinel of Port No Man's Port, they toss their caps into the air and set up cheer after cheer. Bulger bounded about the deck, doing his best by most rigorous barking to testify his admiration for his little master. The sailing master drew near, and touching his cap and scratching the deck with the toe of his shoe, cried out gaily, "Bravo, little Baron! That was splendidly done. I was sure we would never get through the shifting sands, and when they were passed, I was ready to swear that the whirlpool would make short work of us. But when we sailed safely out of that, I drew near the taffrail, ready to jump overboard for fear that nothing could save us from a blow from Thor's hammer. I've grown wrinkled and gray facing the storms of Neptune's domain, but I never felt I had a master until now." I nodded and smiled and quickly turned the conversation to some other topic. "By the way, skipper," said I, "remember the very moment we clear the English Channel, turn her head southward." "Aye, aye, little Baron," was the reply. Calling Bulger to me, I now went below. I wanted to be alone. The fact of the matter is, I needed rest. The terrible strain on my nerves caused by the hopes and fears of the past few days began to tell upon me. Throwing myself upon a canopy, I fell into a deep sleep from which I was awakened by Bulger's whining and crying. The sailing master was anxiously feeling my pulse. I had slept 3 days and 3 nights. All this time, Bulger had absolutely refused to leave my side or partake of food, although the skipper had tempted him with the daintiest morsels. His joys knew no bounds as I sprang up and shook myself into shape. "Where are we, master?" I cried. "On the broad Atlantic, headed dead south, little baron," was the answer. "Good. Send me a rasher of bacon and some hardtack. The Atlantic breeze has given me an appetite. And skipper," I added, "a little broiled fowl for Bulger." "And now for the land of warmth and sunshine," I murmured. "Now for the home of the orange and the palm. Cold winds like me not. I am a child of the tropics, born in a land where nature works and man plays. No chill blast ever whistled its sad tune over my cradle. Let those who will spend one half of their lives waiting for Mother Earth to wake from her winter sleep. Freeze the body and you freeze the brain. I am of those who love flowers better than snowflakes. Glorious Southland, I greet thee. Thy child comes again to thy arms. Oh, take him up kindly and lovingly." Southward, ever southward, my good ship sped along. By day I paced the deck to watch the dolphins at play or to observe Bulger's amazement when a stray flying fish fell fluttering on deck. By night, with my eyes fixed upon the blazing Southern Cross, I longed for the time to come when I should set foot upon some beautiful strand decked out with coral branch and shells of pearl, in whose limpid waters golden fish nestle mid sea plants of not less brilliant hue. It was now 3 weeks since the last murmur of Thor's hammer had fallen on our ears. My chronometer marked high noon. Every sail was set, and our good ship careened as gracefully as a swallow that bent in its flight to touch the cool waters of some glassy lake. All of a sudden, the wind fell. Our ship stood still on the motionless sea. My pennant hung like a string. There was no air enough to lift the smoke from our galley fire. A strange, mysterious stillness weighed upon the ship and sea. I knew too well what it betokened. One of those dreaded calms, more feared by the seamen than the buffeting gale, had overtaken us. Our ship stood like one moored to a marble wharf. And as the thought flashed across my mind that days, aye, even weeks might pass ere the winds would lift themselves again to bear us on our way, a feeling of utter listlessness came over me. It required a great exertion for me to throw it off. I dared not let my men see aught of discouragement in my face. And yet it was a hard task. Had I not been made of stern stuff, I would have wept to see my progress stayed at the very moment victory was almost within my grasp. Again, as was the case when the terrors of Port Nomadsport rose, like demons of malignant might, to shut me forever in that rock-encircled basin, did my thoughts revert to home, to the elder baron and his gracious consort, my dear mother, to the servants and retainers of the baronial hall, to the villagers and tenantry. How, oh how, should I be able to face them all if I were forced to return home with the humiliating confession that my voyage had been a failure? Bulger was the first to catch a glimpse of the shadow on my brow. He turned his dark, lustrous eyes full upon me so pleadingly as if to say, "Oh, little master, what aileth thee? May I not do aught to drive the dark melancholy from thy face? Thou knowest how I love thee. Teach me to help thee. My life is thine. Thy grief weighs like lead on my heart. Speak to me, little master." Tenderly and lovingly I stroked his head and spoke in softest tones to him. He was rejoiced, but still he sat and watched me, for it was impossible to deceive him by feigning to be light-hearted and unconcerned. The second week found us lying like a log in a mill pond, our sails unvisited by the faintest breath of air, the sea sunken into a sleep that seemed like death. Despair sat on the faces of my men. "Rouse thee, little baron," I murmured to myself as I paced my cabin floor. "Where is thy boasted cunning? Where is thy vaunted wisdom? Nevermore say that thou art a man of projects, quick to devise and quick to perform. thou hast lost thy hold on the spoke of fortune's wheel. Thinkest thou so? Cried I, in answer to my own thoughts. Follow me, we shall see. With a bound I cleared the gangway. The sailing master lay asleep on the deck. The men in groups, here and there, looked the very picture of despair. Rousing the skipper with a vigorous tug at his belt, aided by Bulger's frantic outburst of barking, I called out, "Avast there, skipper! Asleep from overwork? Pipe all hands on deck." The men came up in lively fashion, greatly amused by my cut at the sailing master, who stood rubbing his eyes, half dazed by my sudden outburst. "Send me the ship's carpenter," I continued, and catching up a piece of chalk, I drew a plan of a large box or chest, nearly as long as our ship's breadth of beam, and gave the carpenter directions to build it of the strongest planks to be had on board. He and his assistants were soon at work. Turning then to the cook, I ordered him to kill the pigs and fowl we had shipped for our own supply of fresh meat, bidding him to be careful and not lose a drop of the blood. These orders fairly drove my men wild with curiosity. The sailing master drew near and attempted to get some explanation from me, but in vain. I was too deep in thought to speak. The long box was ready in a few hours. Word now went up that I was about to abandon the ship and strive to reach land by rowing, and that this long box was to hold the provisions. The sailing master again fixed his gaze inquiringly upon me. I pretended not to notice his beseeching looks. The cook by this time had the fresh meat in readiness. Under my directions it was all transferred to the long chest, the blood poured over it, and the box securely closed with a heavy plated glass lid, made up of several pieces shipped for the purpose of restoring broken lights. By this time the men had grown so excited over this mysterious box and its still more mysterious contents that I was obliged to order them to fall back so that the carpenter and his assistants might go on with their work without interruption. The next step was to weight the long chest with lead and to attach hoisting tackle to each end by strong iron rings. When all was ready, I called out to my men to stand by and lowered over the stern rail. Stationed so that I could watch the lowering of the long box, I was careful to sink it about 3 feet under water and then lash it firmly to the ship's stern. I had scarcely given the word to lower away on all the sails when the ship began to move. The effect on my men was indescribable. Some turned pale and stood as if transfixed with fear. Others laughed in a wild, maniac-like way. Others, who had their wits about them, rushed to the stern taffrail to fathom the mystery. A glance was enough. It was a simple thing, after all. Gradually, the others recovered their reason and hastened to join their companions and gaze down into the waters where I had lashed the long box, with its glass lid and strange contents. Meanwhile, our good ship moved faster and faster through the sluggish, listless waters. A ringing cheer, 3 times repeated, went up when the mystery was fully solved. Mystery? Hear then what this mystery consisted of. In the first days of this dead calm, which settled like a terrible blanket spread over us by the hands of some unseen monster to check our advance, I had noticed that the waters swarmed with sharks of extraordinary length, that these fierce demons of the deep hung about our vessel in shoals of countless numbers, attracted by the garbage thrown overboard, and doubtless too by the odor of the many living beings on board the ship. When at times a particularly large supply of garbage fell into the water, so fierce was the onslaught of these ravenous monsters that they actually jarred the ship as they struck against its sides or stern, locked together like advancing cohorts of trained soldiery. Upon this hint I acted. If, as I reasoned, I can only control this now wild force, why, may I not make use of it to rescue my ship from a worse danger than raging storm? For far better would it be to face the howling blast and foam-crested wave than to perish from thirst, chained to the open sea by this breathless calm. And we're going to pause here, and we'll continue with this chapter in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.